Trump is now just blatantly declaring that he intends to ignore the law in his continuing occupation of DC. Take a look.
Your federalization of the police has a 30-day limit unless Congress acts to extend it. Are you talking to Congress about extending it, or do you believe 30 days is sufficient?
Well, if it's a national emergency, we can do it without Congress, but we expect to be to Congress before Congress very quickly.
Okay, so there's a lot there. Some of it's scary. So we expect to be before Congress, about Congress shortly. Okay, so just do that then. So why are we doing the thing about if it's a national emergency? And let's just pause there for a second. So he is declaring that DC has an emergency, which it doesn't. It's just not an emergency. Okay, he's the only person that believes it is. Now he's saying that the situation with crime in DC is not just an emergency for DC, for the whole country. I'm here in LA, and honestly, I'm scared out of my pants with how bad it is there. I didn't know it was threatening me and my family over here in LA, but no, evidently it does. Whether you live in the Rio Grande Valley, the suburbs of Portland, you should be way more worried about DC, because it's a problem for you too, for all of us, really. All of this is nonsense. It's none of these types of emergencies. But what Donald Trump is doing is not missing one opportunity to point out that despite the fact that the Republican Party controls everything and is thus responsible for everything, that's not enough. It's not enough that he has a sycophantic House of Representatives, a Senate who will never challenge him on anything. It doesn't matter. Never forget, I can just ignore all of it. They give me everything I want, but if they ever don't, okay, I don't care. I'm just gonna overrule them anyway. And so, I guess to some extent, we've had the benefit, I guess, of the fact that the Republicans have never stood up to him. Because if they ever did stand up to him, then we might see what happens when they do that. And how willing he will be to just trample over the Senate and the House. And that might come at some point, maybe after the midterms, when Donald Trump is a lame duck and they start to worry more about their political futures than continuing to have their horse tied to the cart of a 83-year-old who's probably not long for this world. Maybe we'll find out then. But for now, he is assuring us that it's going to continue if he wants it to, and neither the House nor the Senate nor the facts are going to be an obstacle to that. And so it's also not true, by the way. I don't know if that matters anymore. The national emergency thing isn't actually true. The Home Rule Act only allows the president to take over the DC police force for 30 days, and Trump would in fact require an act of Congress to extend beyond that deadline. Just declaring that it's a national emergency doesn't actually change that. And I say that part mostly for any conservatives who might be watching this. I know that you've gotten really used to the fact that, hey, everything's an emergency always. That doesn't actually make him a dictator from floor to ceiling, every power that he potentially wants. Maybe soon, de facto, that will be how our system actually functions. But in terms of the law, in terms of the Constitution, that's not actually true. No matter how much him and his group of toadies might want it to be. And to be clear, some of these toadies are really on board. Here, in fact, is the toadiest.
President Trump, he's going to make sure not only is it safe, it's a showpiece for the whole world. And that's the right thing to do for the greatest nation on earth.
Is enough for that, or do you think it would need to be longer?
President Trump doesn't have a limitation on his authority to make this country safe again. There's no limitation on
that. There is actually in the law, in the Constitution, in the norms, with common sense. There are actually a lot of limitations. You don't care about those because you despise the law and the Constitution. I get that. You bow down to this man. That's it, Tom Homan. I get that. But that's not actually how it's supposed to work. Or maybe I'm wrong. And it is actually how it works now. What Tom Homan basically said there is something that our audience got used to earlier this year, which is he who saves his country breaks no law, which, to be clear, is not actually in the Constitution or the law or anything. It's not a statute. It's just a thing that somebody said at one point. But if that does become the truth, then hold on to that in the old noggin, because when President AOC is in charge and Texas has another devastating school shooting and all the politicians show that once again they care more about protecting the gun manufacturers than protecting the actual kids, maybe she needs to send the feds to occupy Texas. And you might say, well, she can't do that And I would say, Tom Homan would say, there's no limitation on your authority to protect the nation. So, when there's continued violence, when maybe there's a mob that invades DC trying to overturn the results of an election, maybe we need to track down where they're from and send the feds to that. Again, there are no limitations on what you do to protect your nation. So that's what they're saying. Again, none of this is true. It's not legal. It's not constitutional, no matter how many times they repeat it. But that is the system they want us to have. They want effectively a police state, or something even worse than a police state. I mean, he's got his secret police, he's got ICE on the streets. That's not even enough for him. No, he wants troops, he wants tanks, he wants machine guns. And he is hoping that he will be able to terrify people into accepting it. And unfortunately, America, even in the best of times, like 30 to 40% of us are just waiting for an excuse to give up our rights, to bow down before Big Brother. That is unfortunately the way that it functions. It's true of a lot of humans, actually. I'm not ready to do that. I hope you're not ready to do that. I still care about the system of government we're at least supposed to have. I care about the concept of America that the Republicans have turned their backs on, that they have sold so cheaply for a brief feeling of safety against phantom menaces. It's not even true, the crime that they're talking about. I, for one, am not gonna give up my rights for that.